As he wraps his broken fingers in casts, the opposing quarterback is thinking there's no way he could catch an interception. Yet in reality, Bill Nelson knew he could. Larry Wilson would intercept a pass and cradle that ball to the 5-yard line. For those familiar with Wilson, however, this heroic play comes as no surprise. Catching a ball is hard. Some players struggle to do it with two hands, and we marvel at these one-handed catches. Yet Wilson did it with two broken hands wrapped in bulky casts. He was not the biggest guy on the field at 6 foot and 190 pounds, but man was he tough.
Pound for pound, as tough a football player as there was in the National Football League.
Wilson amassed 52 interceptions in his Hall of Fame career, but none came close to this one. He had broken fingers on both hands the previous game, but instead of missing a game, or the rest of the season, he simply bandaged the broken hands and played against the advice of the team doctor. I mean, you don't need a doctor to tell you that. Yet, it kind of made sense. As a writer put it at the time, Wilson did what teammates with healthy and unencumbered fingers couldn't do. He'd go on to get surgery a couple weeks later and miss 4 games. What a wuss, am I right? But this moment was just one of many that proved the guy was tough as nails, because he'd come back for the final game of the season with bulky pads on his hands again and finished the day with 3 interceptions and a 96-yard pick 6. He single-handedly almost won them that game, with his other 2 interceptions leading to touchdowns, but the Browns barely got by with a 27-24 victory. Seriously though, players of this era were exceptionally tough, often playing with broken bones. The fact that Wilson actually intercepted a pass is another story though. But making plays with a lack of hands was kind of his signature. He had a one-handed interception in 1966 against the Eagles, which he returned for a 91-yard touchdown. Yet, despite being a pioneer at the free safety position, responsible in part for popularizing the safety blitz, it was not always smooth sailing for Wilson. He was drafted by the Cardinals and the Jets during the time of the NFL and AFL, but ultimately chose the Cardinals. Despite being drafted as a running back, he was moved to cornerback after one practice, so things were already looking shaky. But he did have some experience on the defensive side in college. Still, even with that switch, he wasn't sure he'd make the team. He was torched by Colts receiver Raymond Berry in his first preseason game. That would get him some time on the bench, and his career could have been over at that point. Thankfully, he'd performed well in the final game of the preseason, and that was enough to get the starting role for the regular season. But it would not be till the second year that things would finally start to come together. Defensive coordinator Chuck Drulis thought Wilson would be the perfect guy to execute the Wildcat. No, not that type of Wildcat. What? No, obviously not. Right, Drulis had invented the safety blitz and called it the Wildcat. The role of the defensive backs had always been just to cover receivers and make tackles. They had not typically rushed the quarterback. But Wilson had speed and athleticism that actually helped him thrive as a running back in college and would prove useful on the defensive side. In his senior year, he rushed for 559 yards and 8 touchdowns, which included a school record of 5 touchdowns in a single game. Combine that with the fact he was an excellent tackler, Wilson was on his way to greatness. In the first game they used the blitz, Wilson had 2 sacks. That would kickstart his Hall of Fame career, earning him his first of 8 Pro Bowls in 1962. He also has 5 first-team All-Pro selections, which is equal to that of Hall of Fame safeties Ronnie Lott and Ed Reed. Almost 50 years later, he still holds the franchise record for interceptions, and that's just one of his 10 Cardinal records. Unfortunately for Wilson, he was on some pretty mediocre teams, but that never affected his individual performance. For example, they went 5-9 in 1965, but Wilson finished with 6 interceptions for 153 yards and a touchdown, which included that broken hand pick. In the final game of his career, he would again demonstrate his brilliance, cracking his rib, but finishing the game. There's really nothing to a cracked rib, he'd say.